thing is about the sea is that you disappear without a trace. There's nothing left. You can't be found. It is a true disappearance.
Somebody wrote that Bas Jan had said that he would disappear for 3 years and then return. I didn't believe that that was what he was doing ever, but in the back of my head, I thought, well, I'll give him 3 years and then he'll be dead, for sure. I couldn't stop crying for years.
It had been 30 years since Marcel Ader saw her husband disappear behind the horizon in pursuit of a masterpiece the world would remember him by. He called his journey In Search of the Miraculous, but to this day the true nature of Bas Jan Ader's quest remains one of the great mysteries of the art world. In the spring of 2005, Marcel asked me to make a movie about Bas Jan, in the hope that I could shed some light on the artist's life, thanks to our shared history. I drove out to see her in the Inland Empire, 50 miles outside LA, where the houses serve as shelter from the scorching desert sun and the dogs bark once a day when the mailman stops by. Marisul's instructions were as follows.
The right approach is to interview all these cohorts and family members and see what they have to say, and then try some other routes into understanding them, because I don't think what they have to say is going to give you a lot. So you have to trust your own instincts, because the tie between you and him is really strong.
Retracing the Dutch artist's footsteps brought me back to the country we both left behind. A flat land below sea level where Calvinism has been thriving for centuries. Following a long tradition of artists leaving Holland, Bas Jan and I had immigrated at an early age to California, where he would make his art films, and I joined the movie industry. He became known for his explorations of gravity, while I explored gravity models in virtual reality. We both married artists who produced our films. And perhaps most significantly, both of us were the archetypal sons of idealistic teachers and ministers hailing from the high north of Holland. His father preached and played the organ in this church, 10 miles from the German border, which is where I began my search for Bas Jan Ader. Today, no services are held in the church, as it just sits there, preserved as a monument to Bas Jan's heroic parents. During World War II, Bas Jan Ader Sr. became a resistance hero, saving numerous Jews from certain death in the German extermination camps. Following his father's execution by the Nazis, his mother took over the pulpit and had high hopes that her eldest son would someday do the same. I was told that Bas Jan's mother was buried in the cemetery beside the church, but her name was nowhere to be found. This was perhaps a good thing, considering that she would have turned over in her grave had she found out that across from the church now stands a brothel, catering to, of all people, the Germans. I connected with some neighbors who expressed their concerns about the artist's ill-fated exploits.
Bas Jan Ader, dat had niet gemoeten. Die wou in een notendop over de oceaan. Ja. Dat was iemand, hij woonde in Amerika, hè? Ja, dat was hij heette net als een vader.
Dat is mijn broer.
I visited a school friend of Bas Jan's in the hope of further revelations.
Ik zou zeggen, zoek u een stoel op.
Daalder.
Daalder.
Nou, ik heb Bas Jan leren kennen op de ULO-school, waar we dus samen heen fietsten. Maar dat ging in een dermate hoog tempo, dat wij dus geen tijd hadden om te converseren.
Years later, he went to see a retrospective of his old friend's work, which he reconstructed in his own roundabout way.
Ja, hij had een film gemaakt over zijn leven in Amerika. Daar zag je hem dus in een boom klimmen, boven een sloot. En nou, het was eigenlijk voorspelbaar dat hij tak kon afbraken. Het zat hem vaak tegen. Hij had vaak dingen die dan toch weer heel anders liepen als hij verwacht had.
According to the town's collective memory, Bas Jan's life was the bad luck story of a prodigal son who never returned from his journey. A journey that started out in Amsterdam, where he studied art at the Rietveld Academy together with his friend Ger van Elk.
Being at the art school, he made a drawing, and that was like a small sheet of 50 by 60 centimeters white paper. And drawing classes, he always made a drawing on that same sheet. He never threw it away, but used the same sheet and always used then the eraser. You know, it was like, oh my God, it's so difficult making a drawing. It's not good, you know. So he erased, and he erased next week, and the week after, and the week after. Still the same piece of paper. At the end, he used the eraser so much that it was not a drawing anymore. It was like a piece of paper that you could look through. That really, for me, is the icon of Marcel.
Years later, Van Elk's metaphor could just as soon be applied to Bas Jan's life, which in just a few decades had become almost impossible to reconstruct. As it turns out, time is the biggest eraser of them all. Even his house, once the site of so much of his work, has now made place for a barren plot of land. And Bas Jan's widow Mary Sue has long since moved 20 minutes down the road. When I went to visit her to dig up some mementos of Bas Jan's life, it turned out that the artist's legacy was threatening to be completely overwhelmed by layers of more recent memories, to be haphazardly excavated by the resilient widow and yours truly. Explain to us what happened here, like in all these rooms and the garage and so on. Like the whole past kept compiling.
Yeah.
Like, and you never ever revisited any of it.
I've tried not to.
I mean, you carry all of this along with you, and everybody goes on and on and on about this legacy, and here it is, sort of like we have to salvage it from under like piles and piles of clothes and stuff, and
Depressed.
oh, there you are. And rats in the drawer. and indeed, like the people in Holland, you know, like they would go crazy. The most proper people in the world. I remember we could.
They would think that, oh yeah, that's why she's that way. She's all depressed, or she's all like, let everything go, you know, that kind of thing.
Depressed even.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's what they would probably think. Mess is equal to depressed, or not quite handling things very well.
Right.
And it's probably partly that, but not totally.
Finding mementos of Bas Jan's life was like digging for treasure. Here's what we found. A picture of Bas Jan's parents. The house where they were hiding Jewish people during World War II. A photo album of those whose lives they saved. Bas Jan is his father, a few months before he was executed by the Nazis. And here is his mother, aged 3. His younger brother Eric, who never got to know their father. Mary Sue, the American girl he fell in love with. Their wedding in Las Vegas. shots from an exhibition at Claremont College, Bas Jan's graduation picture together with his friend Bill Levitt. And here's the announcement of his final journey in search of the miraculous. The documentation of someone's life by definition falls painfully short. There are all these thoughts and feelings and sudden insights that people experience, of which no record remains. Unless perhaps that person is an artist. But the oeuvre Bas Jan left behind was extremely small. A substantial part of it was made in just one single weekend. All we have is a handful of his films, a dozen photographs and installations, and a few performance pieces. And all the artist himself had to say about it was that when he fell, gravity made itself master over him, and when he cried, it was because of extreme grief. Which turned out to be a familiar sentiment to his survivors, who found out the hard way how difficult it is to truly get to know another human being.
Well, to sad is a beautiful piece because it means that you cannot actually say what you want to say. It's difficult for anybody. I mean, the loneliness of being in your own soul there is no way out. Not for you, not for me, not for him. I am too sad to tell you means I cannot tell you, and it is making me very sad. And what is it that you cannot tell me? Well, everything.
The problem with art and his art, I mean, now you ask me to verbalize something that if he could have verbalized it, he would have been a writer. I mean, he was expressing himself by all the means. And that was also indeed sort of to some extent the problem when we tried to talk about his art, that he was rather unwilling to sort of verbalize it.
The problem I kept running into was that Bas Jan was an enigma, even to those who had been close to him. On one of my recurring visits to see Bill Levitt, he confessed that by now the memory of his friend had all but disappeared behind the myth.
All right, well, come in. You're here.
All right, okay. New
Yeah,
paintings.
some new paintings.
Oh,
Totally. Yeah.
good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now there's a secret in either.
The secret, yeah, that's not revealed. Possible.
So there we go. The secret not revealed. That's my job here with Bas Jan
That's your
Ader.
job.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What might that secret be?
I don't know. You know, I mean, I see this picture of him on the bike, and I think, what is this person? You know, see, I recognize the face, but I don't. You know, it's like somebody else all of a sudden. I think also at the time when we were friends, I had no idea that I was friends with a myth.
Well, it's true that the people who knew him and who were there, in a way, are the least helpful in the understanding of Bas Jan.
Uh-huh.
So I almost had to put myself there and not knowing him, and saying like, well, I wager he was kind of like this.
But that's good. I mean, you're part of the search. I think it'll come to you when you least expect it.
One of the few things Bas Jan ever said about his work was that it was an unfolding narrative. But according to one of his final artworks, a lot was left unsaid and then forgotten, leaving it up to us to fill in the blanks. Bill suggested that I should take a close look at my own past, searching for clues in our shared history. Like Bas Jan, I was born in the high north, on an island with nothing but horizon wherever you would look, where we were dreaming of the same distant shores we would end up moving to later in life. So this is where it all began, and this is what I call home. The amazing thing, of course, is there is such a place still for me, whereas Bas Jan, to the extent that he ever tried to get home in his final journey, it's this perfect example of the American saying that you can't go home again, that there isn't such a place anymore after you emigrated. Revisiting my own birthplace, I was reminded how similar it was to where Bas Jan came from. An outpost at the far reaches of the Netherlands, where the locals had adopted American farming techniques and the Voice of America was broadcasting jazz from its military bases. Just a stone's throw from both his old house and mine lies the sea, the gateway to the romantic elsewhere that beckoned Bas Jan throughout his life. Here is always somewhere else. It's a line that I love by Bas Jan, and it's actually very, very typical for those who grow up near the ocean. The sea, of course, represents the great unknown that lies beyond the horizon.